Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for Fantasy Premier League content for the 2022-23 season. My name is Dan and I'm not even capping right now, guys. I am so excited because the fixtures have been announced for the new season and it feels like FPL is almost here, and this kind of feels like the first video for the 2022-23 season. We're actually going to be talking about things that are actually going to be happening in the new season rather than just predicting stuff and stuff like that. So this is going to be a really exciting video for me personally. I'm so hyped to make this. I'm so happy to be back and making proper Fantasy Premier League content. If you do enjoy this video, if you are excited for the new season, please do leave a like on the video. Please do subscribe if you're new around here as well. But without further ado, guys, let's have a look at the fixtures that have been announced for the Premier League games and how that might impact our FPL decisions. So I know it feels like a little bit too early to start making decisions in your FPL teams, but we can have a look at these fixtures and kind of try and work out what kind of players we might go for, what kind of teams we might like to select from. I've got on in front of you guys a table that I've made this morning. It is for the first 5 game weeks. I think for me that's probably about right. I know some people like to work with a 6 game week table. Some people like to work with an 8 game week table. I like to work with a 5 game week table personally, particularly in game week 1 through to 5, just because you're probably going to be playing your wild card in around, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's kind of dangerous to plan too far ahead, and I do like to focus on the very near future, the next 5 game weeks. I think that's a really good point, but different people will like different things. This is just what I like. But here we have it, guys, in alphabetical order. We've got all of the teams, all of the fixtures that they have, in the first 5 game weeks. You can see some good fixtures, some bad fixtures. This is making a little bit more sense, but I want this to be even better, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange these fixtures in order of what I believe to be the difficulty order for those first 5 game weeks. Who has the best fixtures, who has the worst fixtures in those initial fixture run. So here we have it, guys, and I just want to say here, this is, this is just my opinion. This is kind of rough. I've only had a couple of hours to digest this information and try and work out who has the best and worst fixtures. So maybe some of you guys would want to move things around a little bit, and I totally understand that. Maybe some of you think some fixtures are slightly easier or slightly harder. That's totally fine. I'm just making this, guys, as a rough guide for you. You don't have to take this as absolute gospel. So even though I say I think Arsenal have the best opening fixtures, if you disagree and you think, Chelsea, Liverpool, their fixtures look slightly better, absolutely fine. This is just a kind of rough guide to get you guys started, ready for the new season. So, as I just said, Arsenal, I believe, do have the best opening fixtures. They've got Crystal Palace away, which I believe is probably going to be the toughest fixture in that opening 5. The Leicester and the Aston Villa games are at home. So, even though they're kind of middling fixtures, I think Arsenal will do just fine against them. And then we've got of course, in 3 and 4, 2 promoted teams. So, that is really nice, and that's something we want to be looking at, want to be looking for. We want to be targeting those promoted teams. I know you guys are going to say, oh, these are good teams. Bournemouth, they did really well in the Championship. Fulham did really well in the Championship. Yes, of course, but we've got to kind of look at it in a relative way when we compare these teams to the Premier League teams. More often than not, those promoted teams do struggle a little bit, and often they are finding themselves in a relegation battle before the season even starts. That's just how things kind of go, but you never know how things are going to turn out later down the line. We may quickly change our opinion, but for now, I'm looking at these Arsenal fixtures and I'm thinking I like the look of these a lot. Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City also got really good fixtures. So it's pretty much, we see Tottenham and Man United quite high up as well. So it does seem like the best teams also have the best fixtures. So I don't know what that really is going to mean. I think it's going to mean that we may find it a little bit more difficult to pick the cheaper players. So we'll be happy with our expensive players. You can have your Haalands, you can have your Salahs and your Trents and your Cancelos. You can pick some Chelsea defenders maybe. You'll have all of that. Arsenal attackers as well, maybe a Saka. You can have all that. But those players are going to be really expensive. So where I'm looking at this initial fixture table, this fixture ticker, I'm actually kind of a little bit concerned that some of the cheaper players may be a little bit harder to kind of decide which ones to go for, because we want to pick cheap players with good fixtures. And from the weaker teams, or the bottom half teams, they all pretty much have pretty poor fixtures. We're looking at, we spoke about, going for a Mitrovic maybe at the start of the season. He had such a good season in the Championship. Maybe he has taken it to another level. He's now the focal point more so than ever in this Fulham attack. And we kind of like the look of going for a Mitrovic. But Liverpool, Wolves away, Brentford, Arsenal away, Brighton away, that's a really tough run of fixtures for Fulham. And, you know, the other promoted teams, Bournemouth, Nottingham Forest, they have pretty bad fixtures as well. So I think even though it would be nice to go for some of those players, I think it's going to be kind of difficult to. Southampton, I think, have the worst fixtures of the lot. They've got Spurs away. They've got Man City and Chelsea in there as well. Leicester away, Leeds at home is probably their only good fixture, really. I mean, at least looking through this, all teams have at least one good fixture in the first 5. But some teams have had a little bit of a rough ride, but that's always the case. But what I want to do now, guys, is just go through a couple of teams that I've looked at here and have kind of identified that I find are a little bit interesting. Just my initial thoughts on what we could potentially go for from some of these teams. So Arsenal, first of all, it's no surprise that they're interesting because they probably have the best fixtures. I completely understand. Some of you guys might disagree, but in my opinion, Arsenal do have the best fixtures, and I'm an Arsenal fan as well, so I would probably like to pretend that we have hard fixtures, but realistically, I really like the look of these. You know, like I say, Crystal Palace is going to be not the easiest game in the world, but I don't think it's the hardest game either. I know Crystal Palace beat Arsenal, you know, by a couple of goals. Let's not talk about it too much, but they did beat Arsenal by, let's just say, a goal or 2 or 3 at the back end of last season. But you know, I do think that was a one-off. I don't think that's a sign of things to come. You know, I don't think Crystal Palace are suddenly Barcelona every single game. They're a good team, but they're not going to smash Arsenal 3-0 necessarily every time they play them. So I think that could be an okay game. Looking through these fixtures, what I'm really seeing is a few weak defences. So Leicester's defence, Bournemouth's defence, Fulham's defence as well. Maybe we want to go for an Arsenal attacker here. Saka is the obvious one, but I think he might be pretty expensive. So I'm kind of hoping that Martinelli comes in at a little bit of a cheaper price. Maybe we can go for him. Obviously, you guys are going to be thinking about Aaron Ramsdale. He had a good start to last season, kind of tailed off towards the end of the season. I'm worried a little bit about Ramsdale just because I think FPL might actually increase his price to quite a lot. I think they might increase his price to 5.5 million, and at that point, I don't know that Ramsdale's going to be worth going for. But if he's 5 million, I mean, maybe it could be considered. If we've got a cheap Arsenal defender somewhere in there, I don't know, Tomiyasu, Ben White. I don't know. I don't know who's going to be what price, and I think that's going to be a major factor. But if we can get cheap way into the Arsenal defence, it might be worth going for a player there. But, you know, aside from that, I worry that because we're going to want some more big hitters, a player like Saka is maybe, just maybe, going to be a little bit out of our reach there. But great fixtures, really, really good fixtures. Chelsea have got really good fixtures as well. I mean, I'm really liking the look of this. And they're not playing any newly promoted teams, but it just seems like a really nice, consistent run of good fixtures. Manchester United, Tottenham, not Manchester United, Tottenham Hotspur, kind of the only tricky game in that opening run, and that's a home game as well for Chelsea. We've got Everton there, Leeds there, Leicester at home, Southampton. You know, Everton and Leeds and Southampton, or those 3 teams in particular, even though they're not newly promoted teams, and I know we like targeting newly promoted teams, they were teams really, really at the bottom of the end of last season, weren't they? Really, really struggling a lot of the time. So for that reason, I do think these are going to be some really good fixtures. I like these fixtures, again, for attackers. The problem is with Chelsea, it's always really difficult to find the right attacker from Chelsea. So maybe going in on the defence and hoping the defenders are going to get some attacking returns. Think Reece James, Ben Chilwell, he's going to be back, isn't he? Ben Chilwell is probably the one I'm looking at the most for this run of fixtures. I think I'm going to start game week 1 with Ben Chilwell. That's one of the players that are immediately leaping out to me when I look at these Chelsea fixtures. So Chilwell, back to what he did when he was playing last season, would be phenomenal. Liverpool, what can I say? Amazing fixtures, playing Fulham in the opening day, so that's going to be a real captain opportunity, guys. If you've got Salah in your Game Week 1 team, you're probably going to be captaining him as well, and it might be very, very difficult to go without Salah, especially when we look at, you know, the Manchester United game. We know what Salah can do against Manchester United. We won't talk about that too much because I don't want to upset too many Manchester United fans, but Liverpool have had some very, you know, they've had some success there as well, and that's meant to be one of their harder games in these opening fixtures. We've also got Bournemouth at home in Game Week 4 as well, another real good captaincy opportunity. So obviously Salah, you know, we could consider going for Nunez. We could maybe go for some defenders as well. We're talking Trent Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, maybe Van Dijk if you want to save a bit of money there. So yeah, I would say at least one Liverpool defender and at least one Liverpool attacker is going to be pretty much essential going into Game Week 1, but the triple up is very much on when we're talking about one of the best teams in the league, in the world, you know, one of the best teams a team that doesn't rotate too much if you pick the right players and has one of the best runs of fixtures in the opening 5 game weeks. So definitely a team that we're going to be targeting. Manchester City is always a difficult one because you have that rotation, but I think if we can get some nailed on players for this amazing run, I think that could be pretty good. Again, Man City have 2 fixtures in here against newly promoted teams. Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest. Both of these games are at home. Now, the West Ham and Newcastle away games, I think, could potentially be banana skins, which is why I've put Man City slightly below Arsenal, Chelsea and Liverpool. But, you know, you do trust that Manchester City will go there and do the business. So, straight away, Haaland is definitely a player that we would be considering for this run of fixtures. You're probably going to want to captain Haaland in the Bournemouth game, in the Nottingham Forest game as well. That rotates quite well with a Liverpool captain. So, for example, you know, you could captain Salah in 1, you could captain Haaland in 2, you could captain, I don't know who in 3, but in 4 you go back to Salah, and then in 5 you go back to Haaland against Nottingham Forest. So they rotate actually quite well as captains there. So Haaland and Salah could be a really nice combo to go for, but obviously that's going to eat into a lot of your budget. So fingers crossed we can get some of these players at reasonable prices at least. Wolves and Brentford are kind of difficult. They've got good fixtures, but I don't really know who we're going to be picking from them. I look at these fixtures, and again, I like these fixtures mostly from an attacking point of view. I'd want to pick attackers from Wolves and attackers from Brentford, but these are 2 teams that it's very difficult to pick attackers from. I mean, Tony could be a potential shout if he's still at Brentford come the Game Week 1 deadline. That could be kind of interesting. You know, Leicester, Manchester United, that's not too bad fixtures if you're an attacker. But defenders, I think it's going to be more difficult. I mean, Wolves defenders, we quite like. If we get some decent priced Wolves defenders, maybe that could be okay, but I don't know. There's some teams here that can score goals. Tottenham in particular, I do worry about a little bit. I don't know. Maybe if you could go for a Wolves defenders there, but they've got very good fixtures. I think if we can get players for the right prices, I would have preferred some other teams to have these kind of fixtures, but this is what we've got. Maybe there is going to be some trinkets in there, but I'm kind of struggling away. As long as the players are cheap, I think there's potential, but I'm kind of struggling to pick out individual players that I'd actually quite like for these fixtures, other than maybe Tony from Brentford, maybe Sa at Wolves, the Wolves goalkeeper, if he's cheap enough, but I don't think he will be cheap. I think he could be 5 million, 5.5 million. Yeah, kind of difficult. Not really sure, despite the good fixtures. Spurs have been mugged off a little bit here. Yes, they've got really good fixtures, but do they have the best fixtures? No. So I feel like if Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool and Man City didn't have so good fixtures, we would be definitely going all in on Spurs. We'd be looking at Son, we'd be looking at Kane, we'd be looking at Kulusevski, we'd be looking at maybe Perisic if he's listed as a defender. But unfortunately, I think it's going to be difficult to fit all of these players in if you also want to get the guys from particularly Chelsea, Liverpool and Man City. So I don't know, maybe Son is actually going to have to be a player that is sacrificed, which could be really painful in Game Week 1 against Southampton. But if you want Salah and you want Haaland, are you going to be able to get a Son or a Kane in your team as well? You kind of hope so, but I think you could possibly go without them. I mean, the only game which I would really potentially want a Tottenham captain would be Game Week 4. So I don't know. There's also Salah, you know, Liverpool have Bournemouth in Game Week 4 as well, so not fully sure about that one. I think the Southampton game could be damaging if you don't have Spurs players, but Game Week 2 against Chelsea, Game Week 3 against Wolves, particularly if you've got those Spurs attackers, Game Week 5 against West Ham as well, I don't know if they will do huge amounts of damage to you, so it's difficult. I think Spurs players are certainly going to be more optional than I thought that they would be, just because they do have good fixtures, but do they have elite level fixtures? Not necessarily. So there's going to be some decisions to be made there. I would still very much like to have a Son or a Kulusevski maybe in my team, or maybe at least one Spurs player, but it's going to be pretty budget dependent, I suppose. I'm going to skip Manchester United just because I want to see how they play under the new regime, and I don't think they're going to be too... I mean, people will pick Manchester United players because they're such a popular team, but I'm going to hold fire on Manchester United for the beginning of the season, I think. Their fixtures aren't good enough for me to want to jump in on them immediately. Brighton could be kind of interesting. I feel like if we get a cheap goalkeeper, maybe, you know, Sanchez maybe from Brighton, if at 4.5 million, I think these fixtures could be a lot worse. And if Brighton sign a new forward, you know, like someone like Eddie Nketiah, for example, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if they signed, a fairly decent striker, a Premier League striker and that player is kind of cheap, you know, 6.5 million, 6 million maybe, then that could be kind of interesting for this opening round. So yeah, that's just a quick note on Brighton. Leeds have some okay fixtures here, I think. Chelsea is going to be kind of tough, but I kind of look at these the Wolves fixture, the Southampton fixture, the Brighton fixture, and the Everton fixture, and think, if Leeds were a little bit better defensively, and they are working on bolstering their defence with their transfers, could they be worth going in on? You know, if we get Ilian Melier, for example, if we get him for 4.5 million in goal, I would genuinely consider that one. Other than that, it's difficult. It's difficult to pick players from Leeds, isn't it? We really don't look at their defence too much. But I feel like if they improve their defence and we can get a cheap goalkeeper out of Leeds, could be okay for this run of fixtures. They look not too bad from a defensive point of view. Aston Villa have a nice couple of opening fixtures. Bournemouth and Everton, those two first fixtures, pretty nice. I wonder if there's going to be some bargains to be had at Aston Villa. If there is, we can maybe go in on there. After that, Palace, West Ham, Arsenal, it does, you know, fade away a little bit. So might be worth taking a risk on Aston Villa just for those opening two fixtures, maybe, possibly. And finally, Newcastle, even though they are really close to the bottom, the third worst fixtures, it is mostly because they have Man City and Liverpool in the opening five. So I'm wondering if we could either pick someone who we rotate, you know, a cheap defender who plays some weeks and goes on our bench other weeks. If that cheap defender, if we get a 4.5 million defender or something like that, if we can play them against Nottingham Forest, Brighton and Wolves, from a defensive point of view, those are pretty good fixtures. You know, Brighton and Wolves, not teams that typically score a lot of goals. Nottingham Forest, a newly promoted team. So, although there is a big gap between Man City, who will score a lot of goals potentially against Newcastle, and Liverpool might score a lot of goals against Newcastle, so the other fixtures from a defensive point of view actually look pretty good. And Newcastle, remember guys, second half of last season, one of the best defences, not just in England, but in world football statistically. So Newcastle defence, if we can get a nice, if FPL give us a spicy, cheeky 4.5 million Newcastle defender, I would be very tempted to buy them and put them in my Game Week 1 team and play them in Game Week 1, 2 and 4 and just put them on the bench for 3 and 5, I guess. So that's the last team I wanted to speak about today. And there we have it, guys. That is the rundown on the opening fixtures and what my initial thoughts are on there. I want to hear from you guys. Who do you think has the best and worst fixtures? Is there anything you think that I've got maybe a little bit wrong in this video? Really interested to know. And is there any players right now that you're thinking of? You're thinking, oh my word, I'm looking at these fixtures and I absolutely must have this player. I want to hear that from you. Is it a Salah? Is it a Haaland? Is it someone a little bit more interesting, a little bit different? I don't know. Let me know, guys, in the comments. Be really interested to know. Of course, please do like the video if you enjoyed what you saw today. I'm very happy to be back. I'm making new season content. I hope you are enjoying it as well. And of course, do subscribe if you're new around here as well. But aside from that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.